From Genesis to Revelation, the Lord longs for us to know Him and His plan for our lives. It started with an encounter. Raised in a Jewish home in New Jersey, Rabbi Jason Sobel dedicated much of his life to finding truth. After years of seeking and studying, he encountered the Lord and found his true identity as a follower of Jesus. Today, he is reaching millions around the world as he unlocks life-changing scriptural truths that restore the lost connection between ancient Jewish wisdom and the New Testament with his books, The Rock, the Road, and the Rabbi with Kathy Lee Gifford, The Mysteries of the Messiah, and many more. This is his story. This is today's Nashville. This is faith. Shalom, Rabbi Jason. I am so honored to sit down with you this morning. You have a beautiful place that you come and stay when you're here in Nashville. You're back and forth, but thank you for inviting me this morning.
Oh, it's so great to be with you. You and your husband, Ted, are two of my favorite people in the world, so it is an honor to be with you.
Well, we just love you and Miriam, and I'm just so excited to share with everybody with what you're doing. You are everywhere. But before we start talking about your books and your travels and everything, I want to go back and hear about you growing up and what God has done in your life.
Yeah, God's got a great sense of humor. I grew up in the Holy Land, New Jersey, where there were more Jews than in Jerusalem. Had lost most of my family during the Holocaust, so being Jewish was really important. Went to Hebrew school, was bar mitzvahed at the age of 13, became a son of the commandments, and then got really into music, became a hip hop DJ, and was working at a famous recording studio in New York City and I looked at all the lives of these famous people, and I said to myself, there has to be more to life than just this. And that really began a spiritual journey that I began to go down, and ultimately came kind of I'd go to study at the synagogue with my rabbi and go to Shabbat services, but then also started to study Eastern philosophy and religion, kind of became a Jew-boo, a Jewish Buddhist, a New Age Jew while I was in synagogue doing all of that. So it's been quite a journey.
But what was it like when you were growing up in the Jewish culture, and were you spending a lot of time in the synagogue?
Yeah. I mean, I went to Hebrew school a number of days a week and learned all the traditional Jewish prayers and how to read from the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and celebrated all the holidays like Passover, and would fast on the Day of Atonement, and Rosh Hashanah, the biblical New Year, just be in synagogue all day, praying at that time. And I found it beautiful and meaningful, and enjoyed growing up with that.
So did your parents ever talk about Jesus to you?
Not really. Probably the extent of the conversation was, well, Christians believe Jesus is the Messiah. We're waiting for the Messiah. When he comes back, we'll ask, and I guess we'll find out who's right.
So tell me about after you were searching, what happened?
I was on this spiritual journey, and looked at the lives of, again, all these people around me, said there has to be more to life than just this. They had fame and fortune and everything I thought I ever could have wanted, but there was still something I saw, that was missing. And so I really began seeking and searching. And it was really interesting enough. It was through studying in the New Age that I was introduced to this New Age kind of Jesus that kind of opened me up to, kind of, who is this guy? What's he about? And one day my best friend called me on the telephone and he said, Jason, I found the Messiah. I found the truth. I'm like, what's that? He's like, Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior, but at the end times, there's going to be this beast with all these heads. They're going to eat people who don't believe. I'm like, what are you, Meshuggah? What are you, crazy? A beast, end times? What did they, this sounds more like a Steven Spielberg movie than something that I could actually believe in. But he was, began sharing with me and witnessing to me. And that began to kind of, okay, who is this Jesus? What's he all about? And that kind of began me on my spiritual journey, which we'll share in a moment, ultimately led to a few supernatural encounters.
But during that time, did you share with your parents that you're having these discussions, or were you talking to your friends about it, or what was going on inside of you? And how old were you at this time?
Yeah, I was about 18 at the time, and 17, 18. And I wanted more than just ritual. I really wanted supernatural, spiritual encounter with God. And that's really what I was looking for, really what I was searching for. And I valued my Jewish heritage. I love doing things like Passover and doing the Seder. And I loved the Friday night Shabbat with the family and getting together and saying all the blessings and the prayers. Were something always beautiful and meaningful and rich about that. But I knew that there had to be something more. And I was looking for that something more. I had a hunger, for an encounter, for the supernatural. And that's really what I was trying to pursue.
So with your friend then, and you started having these conversations, what did you do? What led you to dig deeper into finding the Messiah?
Yeah, there's a few things that happened. I mean, one day he called me on the phone. He said, Jason, could you tell the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament? You went to Hebrew school. And I'm like, sure. And he's like, okay, let me read you a few passages. And he read me this passage. He says about the crucifixion. And he said, Jason, is that the old or the new? I said, obviously, that's the New Testament. He said, very good. He said, let me read you another verse. He was bruised for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And by his stripes we're healed. He's like, is that the old or the new? I'm like, obviously, John, that's talking about Jesus. He said, no, that's Isaiah 53, the Jewish prophet speaking prophetically about the Messiah 700 years before he ever walked the face of the earth. And I began to be provoked to jealousy. I'd never heard this passage read in the synagogue growing up.
Oh, I just love that. And you take people from the very beginning to Genesis to Revelation. And a lot of people are afraid to look at the Old Testament, and Christians, and they don't understand it. And you are showing people from the very beginning to the very end that Jesus is there all the way through. And you've written a book and a study that I'm doing with the women called The Mysteries of the Messiah. And we are going to talk about that in just a minute.